Hello, pattern readers. I have a ton of awesome Wheel of Time news and content to discuss with you today. I'm going to try to keep as much of it book spoiler free as I can. However, there will be a couple of short sections that will contain book spoilers. I will call those out at the time, so you can skip ahead to a timestamp if you need to avoid. Before I get to all the good stuff, I did want to share with you that I have finally started a Patreon page. So I am at patreon.com/readingthepattern. If you like what I do here on the channel and want to support it, I would appreciate it more than I can say. And I've put together some benefits that I hope you will enjoy. I want to give a shout out to my very first patron, Samuel D. And the second is none other than Lauren from Unraveling the Pattern, who I hope you are all familiar with. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Now let's get down to business. So first of all, we had a fantastic Wheel of Time panel at New York Comic Con, which featured a first look at a scene from the very first episode. The scene you can watch on Amazon Prime's YouTube channel, so I will link that for you. And the panel you can still watch if you're someone who bought a digital pass to the con, but I will summarize that for you and provide a few clips. But I'm going to start with the scene. So I can't play the scene for you, but I am going to share some screen caps along with my commentary. There's an establishing shot of Emmons Field, which I'm pretty sure is just going to be called Two Rivers in the show, but in any case, it is the village at night and it is stormy, but we can hear the festive music from inside the inn. I love that an atmosphere of both joyous celebration and foreboding is established right at the top. Inside the inn, it's crowded and lively, people drinking and smoking tobacco. Egwene is waiting on tables. It does look as if we have a group of women at one table and others of men. It does make me wonder if there is some discussion happening within the women's circle, at least. Rand is watching Egwene from across the common room, and she catches his eye for a moment. He looks serious. Perrin joins Rand. He asks in reference to Egwene how the ceremony went today, and Rand says he doesn't know. He hasn't spoken with Egwene. Perrin assures him she must just be busy, and Rand agrees. I really love the way they are establishing Rand and Perrin's friendship here, as well as hinting at the relationship between Rand and Egwene. At this moment, the door to the inn swings open. A masculine figure first enters, and we cut to Nynaeve, who snaps to attention at this unexpected appearance. The figure walks in, and everyone starts to take notice, and talk begins to quiet. Rand and Perrin shift subtly from leaning back to standing at attention. Nynaeve approaches the hooded figure with a hand on a belt knife and says, "Name yourself, stranger." The man removes his hood and says simply, "Lan Mandragoran," and "This is Moiraine." Moiraine enters in a scene that we've seen in the first teaser trailer and removes her hood. The camera cuts first to Egwene, then Perrin and Rand. Meryn Alvear, the innkeeper, approaches and asks, "My lady, can I help you?" Moiraine walks right by Nynaeve, and Nynaeve follows with her eyes, hands still on knife. Moiraine says simply they'll need stables for their horses and a room for the night with 2 beds and fresh linen. She shows her great serpent ring. Meryn then says, "Of course, Moiraine Sedai." She has recognized the ring and knows that this is an Aes Sedai. Moiraine crosses to warm her hands by the fire, and there is chatter among the crowd. Moiraine then turns and begins taking in the scene. Her eyes go first to Mat, who is chatting with a woman. We don't know for sure which role this character will be, but the actress is Nana Aguiye Ampadu. She was rumored to be playing a character called Danya, perhaps someone who was new for the show. Moiraine's eyes shift to Nynaeve, who is glaring, hands still on knife, then to Egwene, and then the focus shifts to behind Egwene, where Perrin and Rand are still standing. Moiraine has immediately narrowed in on our protagonist, and she has a very subtle knowing smile on her face. Moiraine then looks to Meryn, who asks her to follow her, and leads Moiraine out of the common room. So I've seen some people saying that this little scene was overly dramatic compared to how they had imagined it in the books. Well, first of all, we don't actually see Moiraine's entrance into the inn in the book. We hear about it secondhand, and we meet Moiraine after, outside the inn. And in fact, establishing Moiraine and Lan as characters and how the villagers respond to them takes several chapters. And the show, of course, has to do it much quicker. There is also a trope at play here of, strangers coming into an inn on a stormy night and activity just stopping. But that's very much in keeping, in my mind, with what would happen if there was an unexpected appearance of strangers in this isolated mountain village. So it just communicates that to us very quickly. The reaction that we see once Moiraine reveals herself as Aes Sedai also tells us quite a lot about how they are viewed, with awe, respect, and trepidation. It is worth noting that although later in the book, Moiraine and Lan sometimes don't use their real names and hide the fact that Moiraine is Aes Sedai, that doesn't happen in the Two Rivers. They do use their true names. And although Moiraine does not immediately name herself an Aes Sedai, there's no particular indication she was attempting to hide it. Given the need to communicate information to the audience more quickly, it makes sense to just have that reveal happen immediately. There's also quite a bit communicated on Nynaeve in the way she is immediately aware of the strangers and takes the lead on approaching them. We see the way she takes it upon herself to protect the villagers from any potential threat, and she's clearly not assuaged at all by the reveal that Moiraine is Aes Sedai and remains hypervigilant and suspicious. Now, for a brief little spoiler discussion of this scene, if you want to avoid spoilers for Book 1, Eye of the World, just skip ahead a little bit to this timestamp on the screen. Nynaeve being aware of the strangers before anyone else might have not only to do with her personality and her role as the wisdom, but also she might be unconsciously able to sense Moiraine's ability to channel as she gets near enough. I also like the sort of foreshadowing that we get of Nynaeve and Lan being the first to speak to each other. Given that they're about to fall in love, it's pretty funny that their first interaction is her demanding his name, hand on knife. As for Moiraine zeroing in on the other protagonists, we would know that she could sense both Nynaeve and Egwene's ability to channel. And of course, she knows she is looking for one young man or perhaps three young men and some of their characteristics. Now, it occurs to me that it would be really useful if Moiraine has the ability to sense ta'veren, which we know she doesn't have in the books. But it will be interesting to see how the show handles cutting to the chase of Moiraine knowing who she's looking for, because in the book we understand that she's been doing some subtle questioning in the village for probably a few hours at least before we encounter her. Now for the panel interview. Rafe was asked about how to adapt the books to make the show work for both readers and newcomers. He talked about how a lot of fans have really personal connections to these books, himself included. And he reiterated something that he said many times, which is that he feels his job is to capture the heart of the books. And despite the impossibility of keeping every aspect the same or matching all the fans' expectations, he hopes that people will see it on screen and really feel that it captures that feel of the books. He also expanded on something he has said before about the Eastern religious inspiration for some of the world building in the series and the theme of how to restore balance to a world that is out of balance, and that being particularly relevant for today's audiences. Now, let's listen to a little clip of Rafe talking about the magic system of channeling and the gender dynamics associated with it.
So, I mean, Rosamund can probably speak to it even better than I can, but, magic in the world of real time is called channeling, and it's this ability to tap into something called the one power. And in our world, when you first get introduced to it, only women can do this. We think there is a very serious asterisk on that statement that people will learn about as the series goes on. But it really did such a flip on everything in the world of Wheel of Time, this idea that women have more power naturally than men. You see it in every single different culture in the world, providing a different flip that we're not expecting.
So first, I thought it was pretty telling that Rafe said Rosamund might be able to answer this question better than he could. It shows that she's internalizing a lot of knowledge about her character. And then I like what Rafe did in making a connection between the fact that women can channel in a world where men cannot safely, to the fact that women also naturally have more power in a lot of the cultures throughout the world. That always made a lot of sense to me in the books, that one would follow the other. There was a tangible reason why the gender dynamics were flipped compared to what we are used to. And then that becomes a really important theme and touchstone of the series that it explores in all of its ramifications. Rosamund Pike spoke about how she was drawn to the idea of playing a guide character because such archetypal characters are often played by men. And she was really interested in the culture of the Aes Sedai and really enjoyed tapping into this elemental power, something outside of herself, and exploring what it meant to play a character who wields great power and all the things that that means. She spoke really eloquently about the relationship between Aes Sedai and warders and how fascinating it was to her. So let's listen to a bit of that.
And the other thing about the Aes Sedai culture is this relationship between an Aes Sedai and her warder. Now, I've portrayed many relationships between men and women on screen. I've never played one as quite as fascinating as this, which involves intense loyalty, deep trust, huge connection, and yet nothing sexual, nothing romantic. But it's a fidelity and a love that is just as powerful as anything that we know from romantic attachment. And that really interested me a lot. And obviously I found the perfect warder in Daniel Henney, who plays Lan.
Then Daniel Henney echoes Rosamund in talking about exploring this dynamic between their characters as a new way of looking at love. He likens Lan and Moiraine's relationship to that of twins, though he also says that other Aes Sedai and warder relationships in the show are portrayed differently. Rosamund clearly put a lot of work into developing the physicality of channeling and incorporating movement to sell the idea that she's tapping into something greater than herself without relying on VFX. Honestly, the best part of her answer was the way she displayed book knowledge. She spoke about Robert Jordan's eloquence in describing channeling so vibrantly, the way it's sort of like a drug and you can feel it in every fiber of your body. I also loved that she talked about how we're going to see the connection between Moiraine and Lan in the way that they fight Shadow Spawn. I think we got a glimpse of that here in this little scene from the trailer. Now, let's hear a little bit of Daniel Henney talking about how impressive the look was for the Trollocs.
They looked absolutely fantastic. And I think it must have been probably the second week of September 2019. We had a sort of a Trolloc reveal where all the Trolloc, we got to see the final look in person. And it was in the middle of the day, full lighting, and you could not tell. I mean, the costumes, it was just, the makeup was so amazing. What they'd done with these creatures, it was really impressive. And so, when you read the books and they come into Tam and Rand's farm, and the way they're described, it's so incredible. And it's a tall task to get that right. And I think they did an amazing job with these creatures.
Another interesting thing here is the way he mentions Tam and Rand's farm. When I initially watched it, I thought he was talking about seeing that scene in the show. But on rewatch, it seems that he was specifically referring to the scene in the books. So we still don't know if we're going to see the Althor farm in the show, but nice to know that Daniel is also reading the books. Josha Stradowski was asked about the special sword his character carries in the show, and he talks about the connection to his father, Tam, who earned the rank of Blade Master. Josha does a good job explaining what that means, again, displaying some good book knowledge there. And then he also brings in the fact that he also uses a bow as the character, and that he says he prefers it, staying very true to early Rand in the books. Marcus Rutherford was asked about the sets, which he describes as epic and breathtaking, and saying that the set designer is a genius. And he talks about how each location has its own distinct character. He recalls a time seeing a 360-degree view of the set of the village, which included his forge, and how much that helped him as an actor. Also note he used the phrase his forge, lending credence to the idea that with a slight aging up of the characters compared to the book characters, that we might see Perrin as a master blacksmith in the show rather than an apprentice. Zoë Robins spoke about her costume, including her iconic braid, and she was really deeply impressed with the artistry of the costumes and their detail, including elements such as an herb bag that she carries that will never even be seen, and how this really helped her even figure out how she was going to walk as the character. And then there was a really touching and emotional moment that I wanted to share with you.
I mean, it's so integral to Nynaeve, and it was really special for me to be able to incorporate my natural hair texture in the braid. It's such a, I don't know, I feel like we have this really beautiful opportunity to be able to represent in a really loving and careful way. And yeah, it's really, really special.
Madeleine Madden spoke about her audition, which included 3 scenes, all very different from each other, and how this really showed her that the character would go on a journey. She describes Egwene as someone that she can grow with and digs into details such as the way her family is really built into the fabric of the community. She describes Egwene as independent, eager, determined, and with a sense of duty to make a difference in the world that leads to some difficult decisions. She has this internal battle between heart and mind, but she believes she is destined for something bigger. So she says it's an honor to play her, and her words really showed me that she understands the character. This is really a theme that I see among the actors. Zoë Robins describes Nynaeve as a young authority figure, but one who has been undermined, so she has a bee in her bonnet with certain villagers. But she's also headstrong, full of insecurities, complex, flawed, and detailed. Perrin is conflicted. He wants to be peaceful, but he lives in a world with war and shadow spawn. So let's listen to Marcus Rutherford talk about him a little bit more.
Yeah, man.
After Perrin.
Yeah, he's our gentle giant, and I think everything he does, is very considered, and he takes a very thoughtful approach to it. And I think Moiraine kind of takes our kids into this world outside this village, and he's instantly surrounded by, violence and war and destruction. And it's something that he has to come to terms with, and something that he's very conflicted by, this animal nature that we have inside ourselves, but also this sort of, this kind of passive side that we also have. And I think he's very torn which side is in him and which side is going to kind of take control of him. And I think throughout the series, I think that's something that the audiences are going to enjoy.
I think his words about the different sides to Perrin's nature were really spot on. There was a considerable amount of discussion about the horses in the show, which became characters per Rosamund. Marcus in particular really bonded with his horse. Daniel Henney talked about the difficulty of using a stunt dummy for Moiraine while on horseback. And the interesting thing is that apparently Marcus also carried this dummy at some point. So we know from the trailer that Moiraine becomes injured at some point, and it would make sense that Lan would carry her then. And perhaps this goes on long enough that he needs someone to switch off with him, so Perrin would make sense given his size and strength. Now, Rosamund had nothing but praise for the beautiful horses, the costumes, the incredible scenery, and even their ability to do some more of their own stunt work due to being in the Czech Republic. Rafe said there was certainly authenticity in these scenes because the actors really did live in their saddles. Now, let's listen to Madeleine Madden tell a little story about the horse that played Bella.
We've got Maddie's horse, who's Bella, also a very loved character in the books. And Archie was not the speediest of mounts, was he?
He was not. He was the gassiest. He was the gassiest of mounts, though. Always remember when someone was doing like an amazing monologue or it was a really intense scene talking about how, we've just survived 100 Trollocs and a fade, and then Archie just rips the loudest fart. Like, I swear they could hear it back in Prague 1, like birds were flying away in Prague 1. He was amazing. Yeah.
We learned that Josha is furthest along with reading the books, currently on book 11, but that Zoe and Maddie are not far behind. Josha really talked about it being a gift to have this source material, and he spoke about how reading the books really helps him understand the world and the great arc of Rand and his state of mind and body. So let's listen to him a little bit more.
It's a pretty big mountain to climb, but I feel I'm almost on the top of the Mount Everest. And I guess the view from up there must be pretty amazing. Yeah.
You'll know everything. It'll be great.
I don't know, if I feel like if there would be a Wheel of Time University and you would study there for a couple of years after, graduating, there still would be room for new interpretations and new ideas. And I feel like you could, dive into the Wheel of Time until eternity, probably. Like today, I figured something today. I worked on this show for 2 years. So I grew up in Rotterdam. That's where I was born and raised. And then I lived there and I went to Amsterdam to study at drama school. So I lived like 23 years of my life in this area of cities. And then I took that plane to Prague and start this Wheel of Time adventure. Today I found out that, you know, the area with all these cities is actually called Randstad, which translates to Rand City.
Wow.
Which is like, if that isn't the pattern, that I don't know what is.
So hearing him speak about these books like a fan was really one of the most awesome moments of this panel. Rafe also talks about the task of bringing the cities to life. And of course, Robert Jordan has thoroughly detailed descriptions, and he says that these were always used as a starting place. Rafe mentions his book consultant, Sarah Nakamura, who would always provide a chunker of a document for each location. But Rafe also talks about how the designers were also allowed to incorporate some of their own artistic bent. And he felt like rather than trying to recreate everything word for word, that would result in things feeling a little bit more stale than if the artists were allowed to incorporate their own artistry into it. One of the most exciting moments from the panel was getting some season 2 cast member announcements. Rafe confirmed that Kira Coveney will be playing Elaine Tricand in season 2. And then he also shared that Natasha O'Keefe and Mira Sayel have joined the season 2 cast as well, playing 2 of the most important characters in the series, though he did not say which. He also talked about how literally everyone in the show felt that Kira was the perfect Elaine. She is Elaine. So I'm really excited to see her in the role. Now, I want to briefly talk about a few things on this panel that will include some book spoilers through Fires of Heaven. So if you're avoiding those, go ahead and skip to this timestamp. First, let me speculate on who these 2 actresses might be playing. My first instinct for Mira was Varen, and that really has not changed the more I've thought about it. Mira is an extremely accomplished character and comedic actress, which I think really makes her perfect for the role. What do you think? Natasha O'Keefe, I'm slightly more torn on. My first instinct when I saw this picture of her that they used in the Twitter announcement was Lanfear, but then looking at some other images of her, I lean more towards Elida. Now, both of these characters are certainly among the most important, so I think either could be fitting in that way. The other character guest I've seen is Fail. Now, I happen to think the actress is a little bit out of the age range that I would expect to be playing the role of Fail. Now, some people have also said they think she's a little bit too young to play Elida, but I happen to think there's a little bit more flexibility in the ages for casting Aes Sedai characters. Last thing on the panel was a seemingly offhand comment from Rafe about how some of the cast and crew get upset when they inadvertently hear book spoilers. And the specific example he gave was of a crew member learning that a certain character dies in season 3. Now, there's a lot of discussion around this, but to me, the immediate obvious answer was Moiraine. Now, people have questioned, like, how are they going to get to the end of Fires of Heaven by the end of season 3? But to me, that's exactly when I think they're going to get to that point in the books in the show. I did a deep dive on that topic, so if you're interested in hearing more about why I think that, you can check out this video. Of course, there's other possibilities, but to me, that made the most sense as a character that would be upsetting to a random crew member who either hasn't read the books or hasn't read very many of them. Now, for a couple of quick show updates, this past week we also got released a brand new song, the first to be released from the soundtrack by composer Lorne Balfe, and a brand new poster. So on the song, I am going to link that for you. I can't play it, but I really liked it a lot, personally. And it was really impressive that it was written in the Old Tongue, drawn from the books as well as this guide. We also heard from Lorne Balfe on Twitter that this is not the theme song for the show, so we don't know exactly how it's going to be used. Perhaps an end credit song. Given the title, which means four of the flame, it seems to have a connection to the Aes Sedai. Now for the poster. I'm kind of mixed on this one. The overall impact of it I like, and I especially like the use of color. In general, that's something I appreciate seeing on the Wheel of Time. It was pretty evident in the trailer as well. I don't love some of the details in the composition and the way the main cast in particular were photoshopped. I feel like there was not quite enough consistency and things look just a little off. But I also don't know that this is really the biggest deal in the grand scheme of things. It certainly isn't the most important aspect of marketing. I also like this alternative version of it a little better for what it's worth. Now, I want to hear all your thoughts on this episode clip, the panel, the cast announcements, the song, the poster, anything and everything. Be sure to leave me a comment and to like and subscribe, and check out my Patreon page. We are getting so close to the premiere of this show, so the rest of the year is going to be awesome. And until next time, gird your loins, my friends.